A loud party, a casual glance, and a meeting that began in noise, but turned into silence where two hearts learned to beat together. William is a firefighter, a man who knows what fear looks like, and how to hold someone's hand when the world is burning. Natalie is a woman who learned how to wait. Through sirens, through nights without calls, through the fear of losing. A first date interrupted by an emergency call. A first, "I love you," after the fire. A proposal. Not in a perfect moment, but in the only real one, when he came back. A wedding without extra shine. 1 year later, a home, a light left on in the kitchen, and tiny socks beside a firefighter's helmet. And one dawn, when the sirens were silent, Jake was born. This is not a story about heroism. It's a story about love that always waits and always comes back.
Love Stories Max. Welcome to my channel. Enjoy watching, friends.
Between sirens and silence. I still remember that evening so clearly, as if it were yesterday. A loud party at Henry's place, laughter, music, the smell of pizza, and smoke from the grill on the balcony. I almost came by accident. A friend convinced me to just stop in for an hour. I had no idea that this 1 hour would change my entire life. The apartment was crowded, noisy, and a little chaotic. People were dancing, someone spilled a drink, others were loudly arguing about movies. And in the middle of all that noise, I suddenly noticed him. William was standing by the window, slightly off to the side. He was smiling, but not loudly, more quietly, sincerely. He was wearing a simple dark t-shirt, his sleeves rolled up, and I immediately noticed his hands, strong, marked with small scars. Back then, I didn't know that each of them carried its own story. "This is William, my partner," Henry said, bringing him over to me. "We work together. Firefighters." I felt a small flutter inside. Not loud admiration, not a dramatic, wow, but something deeper, a quiet respect. "Natalie," I said, holding out my hand. He shook it warmly, confidently, yet very gently. "Nice to meet you." His voice was calm and low, and there was tiredness in it, but kindness too. At first, we talked about little things: music, coffee, funny party stories. But somehow, the conversation naturally shifted to work. I listened to him and caught myself realizing that he wasn't talking about heroism. He was talking about people. About how important it is to hold someone's hand when they're scared. About how sometimes the hardest part isn't the fire, but the silence afterward. About the smell of smoke that doesn't wash off, even after a shower. About night calls, cold apartment stairwells, children's toys left among ashes. "We joke because otherwise we wouldn't survive," he said, looking down. "But each of us carries a little of that fire inside." I looked at him and suddenly understood. Behind his calm was a huge heart. When the music got too loud, he suggested we step out onto the balcony. It was cool outside, the city lights were shimmering, and he placed his jacket around my shoulders as if it were the most natural thing in the world. You always take such good care of people? I asked teasingly. He smiled. Occupational habit. I learned that he and Henry often work the same shifts. That between calls they drink cheap coffee while sitting on the station steps. That William always checks his gear twice, because one time might be the last. That he remembers the names of the people he saved, and those he couldn't. At some point, the noise inside the apartment rose again. Someone turned the music up even louder. But for me, the whole world narrowed down to him and the quiet between our words. When the party ended, he walked me home. We moved slowly, talking about little things, and there was a strange tenderness in it. Near my building, he stopped, a bit shy. "I'm not very good with beautiful words," he said. "But I'd really like to see you again." I smiled. "I'd like that too." He didn't kiss me then. He simply brushed my hand lightly, as if he was protecting something fragile. And only later did I realize. I fell in love not with a firefighter, but with a man who walks into fire every day and still remains gentle. With someone who knows the value of life, and therefore touches love so carefully. Our story began at a loud party. But the true quiet between us became home. After that party, I couldn't sleep. My phone lay next to me, and I pretended I wasn't waiting for a message, but I was. Every vibration felt like it could be his name. He texted the next morning. Simple, no extra words. "If you love coffee as much as I do, let's find out." I smiled, and said yes. We met at a small cafe near the fire station, the one he said he uses to warm his hands between calls. I arrived early and saw him walking toward me from across the street, wearing a dark jacket, his eyes slightly tired. "You're not scared?" he asked casually. "Of what?" "Of us. Firefighters. Our schedule is strange, and life doesn't come with pauses." I didn't know how to answer, because that was exactly what pulled me in. We sat by the window. The coffee was hot. Our hands trembled just a little. He told me about night calls, about waking up to sirens even on days off. About coming home once and not being able to wash the smell of smoke from his hands. "I'm afraid one day I'll get used to loss," he said quietly. And in that moment, I reached for his hand. I just did. Then his phone rang. A work call. He didn't even look at the screen. He already knew. He stood up, apologizing with his eyes. "I have to go," I nodded, even though it hurt. First date, and he was leaving. At the door, he turned back. "I'll come back, if you're still here." I waited. 2 hours. The coffee went cold. Rain fell outside the window. And he came back, tired, a small scratch on his cheek, but with the same look in his eyes. He sat across from me and suddenly took my hand, firmly, like holding on to life itself. "I never promise what I can't keep," he said. "But I want to try, with you." That was our first real date. Not perfect. Real. And that was the moment I knew. I was willing to wait. Because sometimes love arrives smelling like smoke, and stays as warmth in your hands. That night will stay with me forever. I woke up to sirens. Even through closed windows they cut through the silence. My phone was quiet, but my heart already knew. It was him. Somewhere out there, between fire, smoke, and someone else's fear. I sat on the bed holding my phone, counting minutes, forgetting how to breathe fully. Every sound in the hallway made me flinch. I didn't pray, I just waited. When the door finally opened, he came in quietly. His jacket smelled of smoke and rain. There was exhaustion on his face, and something more. A shadow he couldn't hide. "Are you okay?" I whispered. He didn't answer right away. He took off his boots, sat beside me, and stayed silent for a long moment. His hands were trembling. "Tonight we barely made it," he finally said. "A child's room, one balcony, one step, and—" He stopped. I wrapped my arms around him. Tight, as if I could keep him here, with me. I was scared, I admitted. Every siren feels like losing you. He looked at me, truly vulnerable for the first time. "I never knew what it was like to have someone waiting," he said. "And I was afraid to be the first to say it." He touched my forehead slowly, carefully. "I love you." The world stopped. No explosions. No sirens. Just his voice and my heart. "I love you too," I said. And in that moment, I understood. Love isn't a promise of safety. It's the choice to wait. And to come back. That morning, he came home almost silent. I knew those days, when there was too much fire and not enough words. His jacket hung by the door, smelling of smoke and wet metal. Soot on the sleeves, scratches on his hands. He washed his hands for a long time, as if trying to remove more than dirt. I made him tea, the same one, with honey and lemon. He always said that taste brings me home. Was it bad? I asked softly. He nodded. We lost the house, but not the people. We sat on the floor, backs against the couch. The silence between us was warm. Suddenly, he pulled out a small box, slightly scratched, as if he'd carried it longer than planned. "I kept waiting for the perfect moment," he said. "And then I realized. Perfect is when I come back." He dropped to one knee. His hands were shaking. "Natalie, I can't promise a life without fear. But I can promise to come back. To you. Always. Will you marry me?" I cried and laughed at the same time. "Yes. Yes, I will." He held me close, and I knew. Home isn't walls. It's the embrace after fire. Our wedding was simple. No extra shine. Just truth. I walked toward him slowly. He waited in uniform, without his helmet. His eyes shone brighter than any lights. Henry and the others stood nearby. Those who know the value of every second. When he took my hand, I felt that familiar warmth. The same as on the balcony. The same after every shift. "I promise to wait," I said. "And to remind you that you're coming home." "I promise to return," he answered. "And to protect you the way I protect life." We danced to soft music. He whispered that I was the calmest place in the world. I smiled through tears. A year later, we had our own small rituals. I always left the kitchen light on when he was on shift. He always kissed my forehead before leaving, even if I was asleep. On the windowsill sat his helmet, and beside it, a plant we watered together. Sometimes I woke up to sirens. Sometimes, to him quietly coming home. One morning, he hugged me from behind, placed his hand on my stomach, and whispered, "Now I'll come back even faster." I smiled. Love taught us how to wait. Family taught us how to stay. He was born at dawn, when the city was still asleep and the sirens were silent, for the first time in a long while. I remember the warm lights, the soft sound of footsteps, and William's hand never letting go of mine. His fingers were warm, slightly trembling, just like during our first conversations, when he was afraid to say too much. When I heard that first cry, the world seemed to hold its breath. Small, real, ours. William stood beside me, silent, tears in his eyes. He leaned in and touched our son's cheek so carefully, as if touching a miracle. "Jake," he whispered. "I want to name him Jake." I nodded, because there was something bright in that name. Short, strong, alive. And in the way William said it, there was a promise. Jake wrapped his tiny fingers around William's. And William smiled, the kind of smile I had only ever seen at home. "No armor, no fire. Now I don't just come back," he said softly. "Now I come back to my son." The first nights were sleepless. I fed Jake while William walked the room, quietly humming, as if putting out invisible flames. On the windowsill sat his helmet, and beside it, tiny socks drying after laundry. One morning, he held Jake against his chest and whispered, "The world won't always be quiet. But I'll teach you not to be afraid." I watched them and knew. Love taught us how to wait. Family taught us how to stay. And our son taught us how to begin again.